going on, everybody? Manny here, back again with a brand new video for you guys here at DFS Zone, and we're going to discuss what are the best possible plays for us this week on week 3 of the NFL for the tight end position, as well as the best possible defenses for us. But before I get started, man, I appreciate you guys smash that like button for me. Greatly appreciate that. And if you're new to the channel and have not subscribe as of yet, please do so down below, and do not forget to put on your post notifications. This way you don't miss any of my new uploads, as well as any live shows. I will be uploading throughout the NFL season at least 3 or 4 videos a week, and we'll have a live show, which we already have had 2 of them already for the first 2 weeks, Saturday nights at 7 o'clock right here at DFS Zone on YouTube. So make sure you definitely subscribe, put on those post notifications, and make sure you tune in and join us as a community, as DFS players, to discuss the slate even further Saturday night. All right, let's discuss tight ends, right? So the tight ends that I'm looking at this week, if you've been watching my videos, I've been pretty much saying that I was willing to pay up a little bit at quarterback this week. Saw a lot of opportunities at wide receiver to pay up at wide receiver, and I felt that we had a couple of decent plays, a little bit we could pay down a little bit at running back and be able to use that difference on the wide receiver and maybe paying up at quarterback. I'm not at all one of those that really pays up for quarterback on a regular basis, which I've mentioned in previous videos over the course of these last 2 weeks. But this week, I think it's, we have a lot of fantasy points that can be really gained this week, especially in the receiver and quarterback spot because of the matchups. So I'm kind of favoring that a little bit. But then again, I am always going to give you options. That's the one thing you're going to always get here. I'm going to give you a couple of different plays, and then I'm going to also discuss some possible plays that you should be have on your radar, just in case, that are definitely worthy to mention. But tight end this week, man, obviously Kelsey, Ertz, they're top-notch tight ends. They're definitely in decent spots. I am not willing to pay $75,000 and $7,000 for them, but I think they both are going to be in position to do fairly well here in these matchups. But I'm definitely going to come down and pay a little bit down. My first choice for this week, I definitely like George Kittle here at $5,800. He's at $4,500. He's $4,500 on DK. Definitely love his price on DK, $4,500, and on FanDuel he's $5,800. So far this year in 2018, in 2 games, he has had 13 targets, 7 receptions, 112 yards. He's averaging 16 yards per catch, which is pretty nice. Excuse me, he's averaging 7.3 fantasy points, as you can see here, and averaging a little bit more on DK. Well, let me see what his average on DK. He's averaging on DK 9.1, so 9.1. Last week he had 4 targets. He had 2 receptions only, 22 yards, 3.2 fantasy points. I like the matchup simply. I think that here he has a great opportunity. In the red zone, he's been fairly decent. He's had 3 targets there, 2 receptions, 14 yards. Has no touchdowns, but he has a 66% catch percentage there. And that is something that's intriguing. But the most intriguing thing about this is that we know he's capable of getting 11, which he showed in week 1. So he can get you at least 11 fantasy points. And he's able to also catch and really run well with the ball. Kansas City, he's in a favorable matchup. And the reason I'm choosing and I'm picking on Kansas City is due to the fact that they have had trouble thus far this year as far as the pass game is concerned. They're dead last right now in pass defense after 2 games, giving up on average 430 yards per game, 6 touchdowns they have given up and 1 interception, coughing up 21.6 DK points and 17.1 FanDuel points. The tight ends, just specifically the tight ends, have had 15 targets, 12 receptions, 201 yards. That's a really, really big number. One touchdown. Now, granted, last week they played against the Steelers, and obviously the Steelers fell behind, so Big Ben had to throw the ball a lot. But nonetheless, still, he threw for 452 yards against this team and 3 touchdowns. But let's target more what they did against tight ends. Jesse James had a big game. I had Jesse James as one of my tight ends the first week of the season. Didn't target him last week, and last week he put up 5. He had 5 targets, 5 receptions, 138 yards, and 1 touchdown. Also, his teammate Vance McDonald had 3 receptions for 26 yards. These 2 guys combined for 164 yards last week as the dual tight ends. And this week they're going to have to deal with Mr. Kittle. So I see that as a possible position for George Kittle to be in position to do well here. In the red zone, another key factor here in the red zone, opponents have been in the red zone both weeks both games between the Chargers as well as the Steelers, both times the teams have been down in the red zone. They have scored 3 times. They have been there 3 times, 3 opportunities. All 3 times they scored a touchdown. So Kansas City has had their issues in shutting down in the red zone. The beauty about them is that their offense is so dynamic that they're able to get away with that a little bit. But the only drawback is that San Francisco has been able to get into the red zone. They've been in the red zone 3 or 4 times per game in the first 2 games, but they've only scored 1 touchdown and 1 field goal per game in each game. So they're right now currently converting at about a 34% clip, and that is the only thing that is really a big drawback that is a little negative for me there. But I still love the matchup. I think that he's going to get a lot of targets. What I'm also thinking is that Kansas City is pretty good in shutting down the run. They're pretty good there. I think they're 3rd or 4th in rushing defense. But their front 4 is pretty solid so far. And I think that's going to neutralize them to not only run that well, but also look for short-term passes. So I can see Jimmy Garoppolo hitting Mr. Kittle a little bit more often on the short little pass patterns. And that's one of the reasons why I feel that he's a good target here as someone that we should consider as possibly a great play. My next tight end that I am considering is right underneath him, and he just came up a little lame today, so he's questionable. Is Evan Ingram of the New York Giants. He's here at 5,800. He's 4,300. Yes, he is 4,300. He's not questionable, but we'll monitor that. That was posted today. He was actually pretty good. He had a good game last week. Thus far this year, in 2018, 12 targets, 9 receptions, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. He's at a 76% clip as far as catches are concerned. 9.4 yards per catch is not too bad for a tight end, and 42.6 yards per game. Last week, he had a pretty nice week. His best week of so far this year. He has 7 targets, 7 receptions, 67 yards, 1 touchdown. Put up 16.2 FanDuel points and 19.7 on DK, obviously because of the receptions. Remember, PPR comes into play really big on DraftKings, and then his price is $4,300 on DraftKings. He's actually $1,500 cheaper on DraftKings. So Ingram, the longest he's healthy and ready to go by Sunday, I think he's a fine play here. In the red zone, he's only had 1 target, but that 1 target, he converted into a touchdown. As you can see there, 1 touchdown, 1 reception, 18 yards, 4 touchdowns. Houston, on the other hand, as far as defensively, is 12th defending against the pass. They're doing okay. They're a little bit lower as far as the defense against tight ends. Tight ends have had 10 targets, 9 receptions, really converting well, 138 yards and 1 touchdown. And they've been coughing up 15.4 DK points to tight ends thus far within the 2 games on average, and 11.2 FanDuel points. In the red zone, opponents have been scoring at a 66.6% clip. 3 opportunities and 2 TDs out of the 3, so 2 out of 3 times. I can see this, again here, Houston's defense has got to step up. Both of these teams are 0-2, so what I'm looking at is that Eli is going to be pressed a little bit with J.J. Watt and Mr. Clowney and company. I definitely feel that Houston's going to have an opportunity here defensively to do well, and that's going to definitely neutralize a little bit the run game with Mr. Barkley. He's probably going to end up getting more targets as opposed to rushes. At least that's what I'm envisioning, and that's what I believe is going to happen. And I think what's going to happen is that Eli is going to definitely try to dump these passes a little bit quicker, a little bit shorter, and it's going to open up the doors for Mr. Evan Ingram, who is very, very good in the slot, in the seams, pretty much those slant patterns. He's really, really good at them, and he's capable and very quick and very explosive with his feet. He has great speed, so he has playmaking ability as a tight end. So I really like him in this spot. I think he is an excellent play for us, especially at 4,300 on DK. I think that's a wonderful price. My third guy and my last guy that I am targeting is going to be a cheaper player. You always want to have at least someone that you can probably count on as a value play. I'm going to go with Will Dissly for Seattle. Will Dissly is 4,600. He is 3,300 on DK. Right here. 3,300. So far in 2018, Mr. Dissly, 10 targets, 6 receptions, 147 yards, which is fantastic. That's 24.5 yards per catch, 2 TDs, and he's averaging 73.5 yards per game if you wanted to break that down. Obviously, his big game was game 1 with 105 yards, as you can see here on the screen. Last week against Chicago, as you can see, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 42 yards, and a touchdown. So he's averaging 1 touchdown per game. But the other thing I like is that he's been pretty efficient in the red zone. Two targets, 2 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 17 yards. So he is getting at least a look from Russell Wilson in the end zone when they get inside that 20, inside that 10-yard line. They're going up against Dallas. Dallas is the 5th best defense against the pass, but I'm not targeting them just simply on that. I know that they're decent. So far, they're decent. Those 2 games for Dallas were against the Panthers and the Giants. Obviously, the Giants are not that good. Panthers are a much better team. They've given up, they're averaging 187 yards per game given up to their opponents. And last week against the Giants, Eli threw for 279 yards, but their tight end, Ingram, who I just selected as my second possible play at tight end here for this week, he has 7 receptions for 67 yards and a touchdown. Okay, so thus far this year, Seattle against tight ends, 13 targets, 13 receptions. The tight ends have been eating them up. 109 yards, 1 touchdown, and they're coughing up 15 DK points and 11.7 FanDuel points versus tight ends this year. In the red zone, they've been okay. 42% of their opponents have scored in the red zone, which is actually below the league average right now, so that's not too bad. But I think what's going to happen here, same thing here. Dallas's front line is not that bad with Lawrence. A little pressure. They get a little pressure in there. I can see Russell Wilson really looking to drop off some really easy short passes to Will Disley, and he has been able to really explode just like George Kittle, able to find the seams, able to find the areas to be able to run and get some really good yardage. So I like Mr. Will Disley here as well. When we're thinking about a couple of other worthy mentions here at tight end, Charles Clay is not a bad play possibly this week for Buffalo. They're going up against Minnesota. Minnesota's had a little bit of issues with the tight ends as of late. Over the course of the 2 games, there have been 19 targets, 12 receptions for 189 yards. They have not coughed up a touchdown, but they've been giving up 15.5 DK points to tight ends thus far, and that's really in the top maybe 6 or 7 in the league thus far after 2 games. So something to consider there. Another person that I'm considering also in that bottom, not so much in the bottom tier, but you could keep an eye on Mr. Graham for Green Bay. He's only 4,900 on DK, which I think is an excellent price because he's 6,200. Jimmy Graham is 4,900 on DK, and he is 6,200, which I will not play him. That's why I'm not even, I didn't mention him at the beginning, but I think he's a fine possible play this week. Going up against Washington, who has had 11 receptions against them by the tight ends, 82 yards and 1 touchdown. They're coughing up 12.6 DK points to tight ends thus far this year on average, and close to 10 FanDuel points. And if you wanted to consider anybody else, possibly Trey Burton for Chicago. Trey here is 5,700 on DK. And I think he's a little bit lower over here. Where's Trey at? Yep, Trey is 3,900, man. 3,900 on DK. Could be a possible sneaky play going up against Arizona. I'm picking on Arizona this week because they are just horrific. But you got Mr. Burton. Arizona's given up 7 receptions to tight ends thus far in 2 games, 77 yards. That's quite a bit. 2 TDs. And they've been putting up 13.4 DK points and 11.6 FanDuel points. So those are some guys you consider. There's also the Eric Ebron, who's done pretty well as well. But again, you could pay down a tight end. I really think that's the best way to go. Disley will probably be the best play for me as far as in what direction I'm going to be going with Seattle game versus Dallas. I think that's a fine play. And basically that is it as far as tight ends. When we go over to the defenses, there's only 3 defenses that I'm really targeting this week. The first one I'm going to discuss, and it's going to probably be one of the ones everybody's going to play, especially if they're able to get some good, open up some value to play defense. You're going to have to definitely consider Minnesota here against Buffalo. Minnesota is 14th in defense this year, in total defense. And they're only coughing up 339 yards per game to their opponents. They have had 3 interceptions and 1 forced fumble, and they have returned 1 interception out of those 3 for a touchdown, which I really like. They also have had 7 sacks on the opposition, so their defense is playing well enough to get at least a pass rush going. So I like that as well. They're going against Buffalo. Buffalo is 31st in the league in total offense. So when you have the 14th possibly best defense overall versus the 31st, the worst total offense in the NFL, that doesn't look too good as far as numbers are concerned. 223 total yards per game, and they've only been scoring 11.5 on average, 11.5 total points in the two games, on average. They have given up 11 sacks. I think that was a big thing that I saw that I definitely like here. Minnesota has had 7 sacks, and Buffalo has coughed up 11. And they also have coughed up 4 interceptions, Buffalo as well. So those numbers just look really too good to me. Minnesota definitely a fine play here at 4,900. They're 4,300 on DK. Next team that I'm going to discuss that I like is the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans going up against the New York Football Giants. 4,400 here, and on DK they are 2,800. That is a nice price for them. They're 12th overall in total defense here. 336 yards per game given up to the opponents. They have had 3 forced fumbles, 2 of them recovered, and 1 interception. Now, granted, they have only had 3 sacks this year. I expect them to pick that up very shortly. They're too good of a front four, especially the bookends, Watt and Clowney. I expect these guys to pick it up. This may be the perfect game to pick it up. The Giants are a little banged up. The center they lost for the year. You know, they're really going to be in a really tough position here. Both teams 0-2, like I mentioned before when I talked about Evan Ingram, and they need a win. And I think Houston is in a better position here. They have the offensive weapons. As you know, I already have selected Deshaun Watson in my quarterbacks as one of my quarterbacks. I also mentioned Hopkins as a possible play at wide receiver as one of my favorite plays this week. And now I'm discussing their defense. I think they're in a good spot here. They're going up against the Giants. They're the 28th overall offense, in the NFL. Total offense, 28th. Only averaging 289.5 yards per game and only putting up 14 points on average total per game. They have given up 8 sacks to the opposition, 1 interception. That 1 interception was returned for a touchdown, and they also have given up a fumble as well, which they also lost. So those numbers look pretty darn good to me, man. I definitely like the Houston Texans here as well. I think they are a fine play, and at 2,800 on DK, that is pretty darn nice, man. Definitely a nice price for them on DK. My other team that I really like defensively is the Chicago Bears against Arizona. Again, I'm picking on Arizona, but Chicago is, it's improving slowly but surely. When you add a Khalil Mack to your team, you're definitely going to improve by a little bit, and they have actually looked pretty darn good. The Bears coming in 4,300 on DK. They're 3,500. Bears 3,500 on DK. Okay, they come in here as the 8th best overall defense in the NFL thus far. Okay, after 2 games, 323 yards per game and only given 20.5 points per game on average for the opposition. I think that's going to improve, and I think they need that to improve if they're going to compete in their division this year. The Bears, defensively, they got to neutralize teams and get them under 17 points a game, and I think they have a shot to do that as they evolve more and more with Khalil Mack in the weeks to come. But they're the top defense, pass rush defense in the NFL, number 1, 10 sacks so far this year. They also have committed 2 interceptions and 5 forced fumbles, and they recovered 2 of those forced fumbles. They're going up against Arizona, like I said, dead last in the league in total offense, 175 yards per game. Horrific. Only 3 points on average offensively total. I mean, granted, they got a donut last week and only 6 in the first game, so they split that into 3 and 3. The only positive is that Arizona has only given up 3 sacks to the opposition's pass rush, which is good, but they haven't faced the bookends that they're going to face this weekend. I mean, they're not going to face Khalil. They haven't faced a Khalil Mack and a defense like the Chicago Bears that have 10 sacks. Okay, 10 sacks. They're going against the very best, and they played those 2 games were against Washington. They only gave up 3. Or Washington, let's put it, those 2 games were against Washington and the Los Angeles Rams. And Washington and LA are in the bottom tier as far as pass rushes and sacks thus far after 2 games. Washington only has 3, and the Rams only have 2. And here we got the Bears coming in with 10 sacks with Khalil Mack on one of the corners. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough game, tough situation for Arizona. Also, they have given up 2 interceptions, and they have also have given up 1 fumble with the opposition recovering that. So they have lost 1 fumble as well. So definitely the Bears are in a very, very good spot. I love these 3 teams. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. So we got here the Bears, we have Houston, and we have Minnesota as the best possible defenses. And then when we got for tight ends, we have Will Disley as the cheaper play. You got Evan Ingram, and you have Mr. George Kittle as the possible tight ends for you guys, man. I hope you guys like that. Drop a like on the video. I appreciate it, man. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so down below. Make sure you put on your post notifications. We will have the live show Saturday at 7 p.m. I may come back with another video over the next day or two, maybe to discuss possible best GPP plays, or maybe even a video for the Jet Cleveland game tomorrow, just to give you guys a couple of tips on how to set up your lineups on DK as well as FanDuel. I may do that if I have the time. If I don't, then you'll definitely see me Saturday night at 7 p.m. So again, make sure you stay tuned. Other than that, man, that is basically it. God bless. Everybody have a great day and a great night, and I'll see you guys on the next video.